Hello there, welcome back to Backyard Ballistics. Today I have quite a rare and valuable gun. In fact, I think over 99% of you will never see one in real life. This is a Breda Mod.30 light machine gun, or machine rifle, translating the Italian naming of the time. It was the light machine gun used by the Italian army during World War II, and unfortunately it didn't gain its popularity because of its performance, but rather the lack of it. Nicknamed the worst machine gun in history, it is one of the best examples of bad decision making in gun design. Now, this example was found hidden in a barn a few years ago, and it didn't look like this, but rather this. It was probably disassembled in order to hide it better, and I just put the main parts together to render it recognizable on the thumbnail. However, I think all the parts are there, and I'm hoping to get this thing working again. Now I want to draw your attention to this oil stain. I haven't put anything on the gun yet, and even though everything else looks bone dry, this area is soaked in oil. That is because this brilliant piece of engineering needed an oil tank to operate. Yes, you heard it right. That protrusion is the cap of an oil reservoir, and of course the cap didn't provide a tight enough seal, so it tended to leak over time. I'll tell you everything about this rather inefficient design as we handle each component, since as usual I'll have to strip this thing down completely. No matter the technique I'll end up using, the first thing to do is removing the woodwork, which on this example is quite well preserved. Wow, look at how easily that screw is coming out. That seemed too good to be true, and unfortunately it was. The bushing is spinning together with the screw. Right, with the screws out of the way, I should simply be able to slide the stock out. I worked on a few of these in the past, and usually the wood's cracked under the steel sleeve. Instead this time I was relieved to see everything was still solid, and I think I should be able to get this thing back in perfect shape. And I'll have to do the same thing for the grips, but this time I have no way to prevent the bushings from spinning, which means I'm running the risk of stripping them from the wood if the screw is stuck to them. However, I was once again lucky, and now I'm left with steel parts only. It is time to decide what to do. I could go chemical and dissolve all of the rust in one hit, also making it much easier to disassemble. But on the flip side, that means losing whatever original finish is left and making the rust pitting more obvious. So I decided to go with the most conservative approach, that of boiling and brushing. To be able to fit the receiver in my tank, however, I first needed to remove the magazine. That should be easy, right? Just act on the magazine release and pull it out. No, not on this thing. Here the magazine is hinged on the gun, so you're not meant to remove it and replace it with a new one, but rather rotate it around its hinge and fill it back using a dedicated stripper clip. I don't know what the real reason behind that questionable choice was. Belt feeding was already widespread by 1930, and so were detachable magazines. And both solutions were vastly superior to this hinged contraption, which as you'll see is the single biggest drawback of this design. And unfortunately, not the only one. If caused by a lack of resources or just bad decision making is not for me to say, but when it came to military equipment, Italy had often been either lagging behind in technology or fielding impractical designs. And this tendency concerned all sorts of army supplies, from uniforms to armored vehicles. Oh shit. For example, this is the M1441 medium tank, the workhorse of Italian armoured divisions during the war. With thin and riveted armour, weak armament, underpowered engines and terrible mechanical reliability, it simply couldn't compete against the vehicles fielded by other countries. If you want to feel how obsolete this tank was for its time, try it out yourself against contemporary tanks in War Thunder, the sponsor of today's video. Available for free on PC, consoles and mobile, it is the most comprehensive PvP vehicle combat game ever made, allowing you to take control of every possible military vehicle, including over 2,500 tanks, planes, helicopters and ships from 10 major nations, retracing the history of motorized warfare from the rudimentary vehicles of the 1920s to modern day war machines. All vehicles are realistically modelled and incredibly detailed. With realistic graphics, authentic sound effects and with a worldwide community of over 95 million players, there's no game better suited for fans of military history. Each vehicle is modelled down to its individual components, and a sophisticated damage model is implemented when a vehicle is hit by enemy fire. Each type of armor, shell and missile behaves like their real-world counterparts. That's how you can compare the effectiveness of each vehicle against the others. Play War Thunder for free on PC, PlayStation, Xbox or mobile by clicking the links in the pinned comment or video description. New and returning players that haven't played for at least 6 months on PC or consoles will get a massive bonus pack comprising premium vehicles, the Eagle of Valor Decorator, 100,000 Civil Alliance and 7 days of premium account. Offer available for a limited time only. Hurry up. Going back to the Breda, the second main design downfall is it needed an oil tank to operate. You can even see there are still oil residues inside of it. Now, if you're a gun designer and your gun design needs a dedicated oil tank to function, you should really consider going back to the drawing board. Let's try and crack it open so I can tell you more about this very questionable design choice. That box-shaped thing I'm lifting is the oil tank. The shiny bit I'm trying to get unstuck instead is the plunger of an oil pump. Every time the bolt passes by, it pushes the plunger up and oil comes out of that small tube. That's the actual oil pump I'm unscrewing. Time to take the bolt out. Which is in remarkably good shape. You know what? That oil tank thing was a real menace for the use of the gun, but the excess oiling it provided worked wonders for preserving the insides of it. Now what we're looking at is the core of the breech locking mechanism. The Breda 30 is short recoil operated, meaning the barrel and bolt will recoil together for a short distance, just enough for the bullet and gases to clear the barrel, and then the breech is opened. This plate is the cam guide that causes the breech to lock and unlock when required. And this beefy nut is the actual barrel to bolt link. This is another peculiarity of this design, in that the bolt doesn't lock directly to the barrel, but to a third part connecting bolt and barrel together. That wasn't necessarily a bad choice though, just uncommon. The part I'm moving now is the ejection port dust cover. It had no automatic opening, so if you forgot to open it before firing the gun, it would jam after the first round. This lever serves the function of keeping the locking nut in the right orientation. This is instead the firing pin safety, preventing the gun from firing out of battery. Look at how overly complicated this charging handle is. See, this gun was quite complicated to manufacture, and I'm sure awfully expensive for the poor performance it provided. One might say the worst bang for your buck. They must have saved on the cost of ammunition though, considering how impractical reloading was. What I'm taking out now is the actual feed lips of the magazine. As you can see, they basically split the magazine in two and left the top part attached to the receiver while the rest could be swung out. Looking at the rear portion, the pistol grip fits snugly into the receiver cap, and I'm going to gently tap it out. Alright, now that I've taken it all apart, I can finally restore the surfaces. Since this gun was quite oily on the insides, I'm starting with a warm alkaline degrease. This is 10% sodium hydroxide. Look at how murky the solution has become. I'm then rinsing each part with a commercial alkaline detergent and finally with water. While I was waiting for the degreasing solution to act, I took the chance to separate the butt plate from the stock and take apart the magazine. Now, I bet you've never seen a gun magazine with these many moving parts, at least for a prismatic one. What each one of these components does will be clear once we reassemble everything. So in the end, I'm left once again with a pile of rusty bits. Some of them were more heavily rusted or not worth the effort of the more conservative approach, so I just went with chemical derusting on them. The main parts, on the other hand, are going to be boiled and brushed. That is, just plain boiling water. Unfortunately, rusty stick hardly converts, so the brushing is painstaking and carding wheels are of little help. So I brushed, and kept brushing. Notice that the barrel is already looking quite good, sporting most of its original finish. The other parts, on the other hand, are looking too blotchy for my liking, and I want to add some more bluing. Rust bluing is perfect for this. After doing many projects like these, I got myself convinced it's the best bluing process for restoring items that were originally damaged by rust, and I've prepared my own formulation after extensive testing that gives the results I want. I've been asked for years if I was willing to sell it already made, since some of the chemicals might be a little tricky to obtain, and I finally found a way to make that happen. I've partnered with Duracoat, a well-established brand of firearm finishes, and got them to prepare, bottle and sell my mix ready to use. I think the main advantage of this formulation is that if done properly, just 2 or 3 coats are enough to get a finished bluing. In this case, I'm only doing 1 because I don't want to get it too perfect for its age. We can then boil everything in water, and this time the rust has all converted to the black oxide we want. I then brushed off the excess and we're ready for oiling. The smaller parts that I had derusted chemically were instead blued with a caustic mix, while on the parts that originally didn't require any bluing, I just did some polishing. Now, before I can put everything back together and get it to work again, I need to do something to the woodwork. As far as I know, these had a simple oil finish on them, so that's what I'm going to do. However, there's quite some grime on the surface, understandably so considering the age and neglect, and to get rid of that, I'm using a scoring pad soaked in mineral spirits. That way any oily residue is softened and I can get to the surface of the wood without losing any of it. The wooden surface is not decayed, so sanding not only is not required but would ruin the cartouche, that is matching the serial number of the gun, and I really want to preserve it as best as I can. So, once I got it all cleaned up, I started applying boiled linseed oil, 1 coat every 24 hours, and this is what it looks like now, which is about right. I also gave the grips a good brush and some linseed oil, and we should be good to go. Anyway, here are all the restored bits ready for reassembly. I'm starting with the buttstock. Getting that spring in was quite hard and I had to do it in the vise. The bolt was perfectly preserved, so all I did to it was removing dried up oil and re-lubricating it. The extractor is looking good as well. Here comes the infamous oil tank. Notice those tiny holes between the threads. That's where the oil is pumped in so it can come out of the delivery tube. And this is the oil pump that does one pumping cycle every time the bolt reciprocates. There also goes the infamous gasket-free cap. It was known for slowly leaking oil onto the poor soul that was carrying it, staining the uniform. Then goes the critical firing pin safety that holds the firing pin back until the bolt is fully closed, preventing out of battery fire. Here I'm placing back the bolt link holder. Now, the cover is supposed to be kept in place by this spring-loaded plunger, but it must have mushroomed out as I was trying to push it down. Luckily, I can just rebuild it using the Lampert micro arc welder. And there it goes. Now let's have a look at the magazine. I mentioned that the lips of the magazine remain inside the receiver, so what keeps the cartridges in during reloading? This leader cursor does, acting as a temporary magazine lip, holding the cartridges in until the magazine is rotated back into the receiver against the true magazine lips. The cursor is spring-loaded and is automatically released when the magazine reaches its closed configuration. Then we have a bunch of hooks and other moving parts. And now for the hard part. I knew this torsion spring was going to be a nightmare to put back the moment I took it out. So I'm sorry, but I had to do it off camera. This is it reinstalled. The idea is that the spring helps opening up the magazine for reloading. Alright, time for the chunky bolt barrel link. That's what is going to hold the bolt attached to the barrel under the pressure of the shot. Then goes the bolt with its overly complicated bolt handle. On the rear side of the gun, a beefy spring acts as a bolt recoil buffer inside this holder that also doubles as a firing pin guide. Now it's only a matter of placing the large recoil spring back and we should be good to go. Oh, sorry, I forgot the oil tank. And here's the finished result. Here I'm racking the bolt, making sure everything moves as it should. I also checked that the short barrel recoil system worked as intended. As the barrel and bolt recoil back for a short distance, the link nut is rotated, unlocking the bolt after a certain amount of time and letting the gun cycle. Let me recap all the drawbacks of this gun design. The fixed magazine is a menace. Even in the best scenario, the reloading sequence with a stripper clip is cumbersome and slow. And with a relatively small capacity of 20 rounds only, that's a major drawback. Things get even worse if you want to do a partial reload. Say you've shot 10 rounds out of 20 and you want to fill up your magazine. Upon opening it, the cartridges that were sitting beyond the built-in cartridge holder have no way of going back into the magazine and are left loose in the receiver where they could easily cause a jam. Then you use your new 20 round stripper clip to refill the magazine, but whatever ammunition is left in the strip after the partial reload just falls out and gets lost. If you have loose ammunition but no stripper clips, you can load the magazine by hand, but you have to push in 2 rounds at the same time because the ammunition holder tab is only on one side. The field strip, although not particularly complicated, also had a hidden danger, that of losing the firing pin and its spring. If the firing pin is not cocked, it will just fall out while you're removing the bolt. If instead it's cocked, it stays in place as long as you don't twist it or pull the trigger, in which case it is sent flying across the battlefield. Your choice. The oil tank is a disaster as well. Gun history is filled with designers who thought of case lubrication to solve extraction issues, and practically all of them found a better way. The Breda 30 is a notable exception. Then we have a dust cover that doesn't open automatically, so if you forget to open it and start firing, the gun will only fire 1 round and then jam. The bipod has no swing built into it, meaning that unless you're resting on something that's perfectly flat, the gun will be canted to one side, messing with the zeroing of the sights. Finally, the gun is not provided with a carrying handle and is packed with sharp corners and protruding knobs, making it particularly unpleasant to carry around. Now, will it work? I want to test fire it and I have the ammo. But for this gun, ammo is not enough to work. It also requires oil. And that is not for the usual mechanical lubrication, as in any other gun. If that was the case, you wouldn't require that much oil. This gun needs cartridge case lubrication to work. That means every time the bolt passes by, a little bit of oil is squirted on the cartridge that is about to get chambered. If no oil is used, the gun malfunctions. I think that is due to an early bolt opening being built into the design, and I'll show you why I think that. For now, we need to figure out what oil to use. Since it is so crucial, I checked through the instruction manuals of the time and found out that the army recommended either a specific lubricant provided by the factory or olive oil. I have no idea what the factory provided oil was, so here we go with the seasoning, I guess. Before taking it to the range, I want to try it out with some dummy rounds to see if everything works as it should. Looks like it. So in a quiet setting like the shooting range, the gun kind of works. On the battlefield, probably not so much. If you look at the spent cases from the test fire, many of them have the shoulder slightly blown forward, which makes me think the bolt starts moving backwards relative to the barrel while residual pressure is still high. This also causes lots of friction against the chamber walls, and that's probably why the case lubrication is required. It's not for me to decide, but my opinion is the title of Worst Gun of World War II may be well deserved. Before leaving you, I want to give a final thanks to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to play for free on PC, PlayStation, Xbox or mobile by following the links in the pinned comment or video description. New and returning players that haven't played in 6 months will also receive a massive bonus pack across PC and consoles, including premium vehicles and an exclusive vehicle decorator. Offer available for a limited time only. Hurry up. Once again, a huge thanks goes to my patrons, which as usual are all listed here. Thank you all for watching, subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I'll see you next time. Bye.